Hello and welcome to another Digimedia Pros tutorial. I'm your host, Marcelo Lewin. Today, my guest is Gordon Burkell, who has worked in the film industry and as a film editor for 10 years. He started the website Art of the Guillotine and is currently teaching film editing at Ryerson University in Canada. Gordon, welcome to the Digimedia Pros tutorial series.
Hey, thanks for having me.
We're going to be doing, or actually you're going to be doing, I'm going to be watching a tutorial on iZotope and correcting distorted audio, right?
Yep, looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. But before we do that, tell us, how did you get into filmmaking?
It started years ago and when it was actual film as opposed to digital, and sort of became obsessed with film and started getting into it and started discovering that I didn't like being on set as much as I preferred being in post, where it was a little less chaotic, and sort of worked my way into it.
And what kind of stuff have you been editing?
Mostly documentaries and a few commercials here and there.
Now, there's a complete art to documentary editing compared to narrative, right?
Oh, yeah. It's a very different approach to editing because you're not given the script. You might have a bit of a structure or some ideas coming in, and then the rest of it's you and the director trying to figure it out.
I mean, the entire story is built in the timeline versus in the script.
Yeah, very much. And that's why some editors get script or writing credits on talks.
Right. That makes sense. You also are the founder of the Art of the Guillotine website. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's a site that organizes and distributes information for the post industry. So if you're an editor or a sound editor and you need to find content about your area, you can go to aotg.com. And we basically, anyone can submit content as long as it's post-production related. And so it's a huge database of content now for post.
Yeah, we're on it too.
Yes.
Digimedia Pros, which we love that. So, well, it looks like you're ready to start showing us how to correct distorted audio in iZotope. So I'm going to pass it on to you. I'm going to go unsilent here, but I may jump in with some questions later.
Perfect. Looking forward to it. Okay, so I'm actually really excited to show you guys iZotope's declip tool. I'm using the RX5 full version, or the advanced audio editor version, but it is available for plugins for Pro Tools. As an editor, this is more of a sound editor's tool, but I've started using it because, as you heard before, I work in documentaries, so a lot of the audio I get is pretty dirty. I guess we could call it dirty, and so I end up having to clean up a lot of audio. I'm going to bring in a sample and show you how to declip and how the declipper works. So the first thing you're going to want to know is that up in the right hand side, you'll notice this is our module chain, so we can actually drop in the different filters that we want to use, or the different modules. And I'm going to bring in a piece of audio and then we'll apply the declipper to it. So this is from an interview, and if I play this audio,
one of them will come back and say, yeah. And
it's very distorted. And actually, there's a bunch of distortions in this audio file, but I'll show you how to clean this one up. The other thing you can do, and I'll just zoom in so you can see it before I open the declip, is if you zoom in, you'll see that the waveforms are actually cut off. And so it's not a terrible distortion in this one. It's just a light clip. And if you wanted to, you could physically redraw the waveform, but that's kind of time consuming when you have a lot of clipped files or a lot of clips in the audio piece. So I'm going to zoom out here and I'm going to open the declip tool, and you'll notice, let me just pull this out of the way so you can see everything. We have our presets, so if you wanted to, you could go through and use presets. I don't use the presets. I use the suggestion actually, which I'll get into in a second. And the first thing you'll notice is that we have this gigantic threshold option or tool here in the center. And that's actually a histogram meter. And it's a meter that's going to show us where the peaks are. So if I actually zoom in on this histogram meter, you'll notice that we got our audio waveform here. And then we have this one thin line that sort of juts out. And that's actually where the peak is. So it's giving you a little view of where this peak is, and you can actually, if you wanted to, physically bring your audio down below it. So right now I'm bringing it down negative 1.8 decibels, and if I hit the suggest button, so if I'm bringing this back, I can also hit the suggest button, and that'll suggest what I should bring down that threshold to. And it's suggesting 1.7, and I was at 1.8, so it's pretty close. And you'll notice if I zoom in even closer, it's just underneath the peak. And it's doing that because you want to save as much of your audio as you can, as opposed to just cutting off the top. So
now I have a question for you.
Yep.
Is this showing the selection, the threshold there, is that based on
Yes.
the selection you did, not on the entire file,
yes,
right?
that's
So
a
it may
good
be
point.
different.
Yeah, that's a very good point. This is actually just on my selection. If I select the whole file, it'll have a different levels or different places of where the peak might be. I usually go through and just do small fixes here and there, but you might need to do a whole file if need be. So yeah, so I'm going to leave this at -1.7. Your quality controls the interpolation process, so it's going to figure out the best data points on the waveform. And what you can do if you're trying to figure out what quality to use, you can actually preview a lot while you're doing this, or while you're using this tool, you can preview. And so you can actually preview at the various levels. What I'm finding is that the computer's fast enough to process the high, so I usually just leave it at high. The next tool is our makeup gain. And what that's going to do is it's actually going to, because we're clipping off the top, our audio is going to be lowered a bit. So you can bring up or down the audio based on how much you've clipped or affected it. So if I hit preview,
Because at some point, one of them will come back and say, yeah.
I can actually
They'll
raise
just
and
say,
lower the audio. And it's just bringing the audio back up to match the rest of the file. So let me preview that again.
Because at some point, one of them will come back and say, yeah. Or they'll just say.
So the idea being that it doesn't drop down all of a sudden because that's where you fixed your clipped audio. The other option is you also have a post limiter that you can put on, and that'll try and keep you from boosting it too high so it doesn't clip again. So if you notice, when I hit preview,
Because at some point, one of them will come back and say, yeah. Or they'll just say.
you'll notice when I hit preview, it goes through and it finds the clipped points. And it actually, in this case, it's found 46 clipped intervals. So if I want to, I can actually process that, but I'm going to compare it so you can hear the difference.
One of them will come back and say, yeah.
So there's without declip on.
Because at some point, one of them will come back and say, yeah. Or they'll just say.
And there's with the declip on. So if I like that, I can actually hit process, and it will fix the waveform for me. So now if I play that,
One of them will come back and say, yeah. Or they'll just say.
and it's fixed my clipped audio, so it no longer distorts when I play it.
Now, did this fix it permanently in the file or not yet?
No, if I want to save this work, I have to export it next. So
Okay, so it's not changing the physical file.
no, it's gonna. So now I can come back up here and go export, and you'll
Right.
see I get my options for how I want this to be output.
And if you want to work on this later, you save it as a project, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so in RX you can actually just say go save RX, and it'll
Right,
allow
and it
you
becomes a project
Yeah.
that kept all those changes. Perfect.
Yep,
Thank you.
exactly. Realistically, that's all there is to it.
Simple enough. I like the interface. It's really simple. I use Adobe Audition to do a lot of my stuff just because I'm used to it. But the interface here is pretty clean.
Yeah, I love Audition, so if you use Audition, I'm not too sure if they have it for Audition. I just have the full one because I do a lot of doc stuff, so there's a lot of issues, we could say.
Right. Makes sense. Now, are you able to see the video if you import a video clip here too, or is it only the audio?
To tell you the truth, I've never tried importing the video.
Interesting.
So I've never even looked into that. I take my audio file out and work on it.
Right.
And then bring
put
it back
into like Premiere or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense. All right. Well, Gordon, this was great. Pretty simple to do, but effective, which is the key, right? Especially
Yeah.
when you're doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much for presenting. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, if people want to get a hold of you,
they can get me on Twitter. It's at AOTG Network, or they can get me through email, info@aotg.com.
Well, thanks again, Gordon. And to the rest of you, please remember to check out more of our tutorials, videos, podcasts, and articles at digimediapros.com. So until the next tutorial, I'm your host, Marcelo Lewin. Cheers, everyone.